Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I'm back on the W113 Pagoda this week, and if you remember the last video, I started to flat the Bootlid out, and basically what I've done is I've flatted it down to basically I thought 1000 grit, and then looked at the panel, and to be fair, it looked like I was getting very, very close to having it enough to polish. But for the purpose of making a video, I thought I'll run the polisher over a section to see whether I'd flatted it fine enough. And as you can see, there's still heavy scratches in the paint. So basically I need to flat it more, and it's very, very difficult sometimes when you've got this sort of finish to tell whether you've removed the deeper scratches from the rougher grit paper. So like I say, I've just polished a little section so that I could actually tell how much more I need to flat it. So I started to do it yesterday, and my compressor packed up, and Super Gaz was playing golf yesterday, so I was doing it by hand and not using the DA. So this morning Gary's turned up and repaired my compressor, so now I can use a soft pad on the DA and try and flat all these marks out to 1000 grit, and then I'll do 3000 grit. Well, I'll do 1000, 2000 and then 3000 grit, and then we should have none of these deeper scratches. There are some really deep ones, and I can't capture it on the video, which is typical of me. But here, where it looks glossy until you look, and you can still see them scratches. So I'm going to get on and run the DA over it, and that'll probably take an hour or so, could be a bit longer. Literally just done this, you know, to sort of show the stages that you have to go through to get a fine finish. So I'm going to carry on flatting. You know, I knew that there would be marks, that's why I polished it to have a look, but to be honest, I didn't expect them to be so deep. Some of them, not all of them, but some of them. So I'm going to crack on and get the DA going, and I'll show you when we get a little bit further. Right, I'll see you later. Thanks for watching. Hello again. I've just spent about 3 hours flatting the bonnet up to 1000 grit, and I'm just going to start the 2000 grit. What I've done, I've swapped round the masking. So basically I masked these edges off. You can see they're still shiny because I didn't want to burn through or flat through with the initial flatting. Now I'm going to 2000 grit now, so I've unmasked the edge of the boot lid so that when I'm doing the 2000 grit I can go and overlap and do the edges, because I don't want to break through the edges, because I'll have to end up painting it again. Now what I've done, I've put something underneath the boot to hold it up so that the DA doesn't hit the wings. Also I've taped up the edges on the wings and the back panel so that the DA doesn't hit the paintwork that's already done. I'm going to put some brown paper over these as well so that there's no chance of me damaging anything. And now I'm going to start the 2000 grit. And I've got to get this glue off from the masking before I start, else that'll get in the DA pad and leave pigtails in the paint, and we don't want that. So I shall go around with white spirit, or panel wipe as it is, and remove the glue. So now I'm going to go over it with 2000 and then 3000 grit, and by the time I get to that stage I should be able to tell completely that I've got rid of all the scratches from the flatting paper. So I'm going to mask the wings off now, and then I'll start with the 2000 grit. Hello everybody, it's Ted from the Devil's in the Detail. As you can see, I'm wrapped up like a kipper because I'm just getting over the bout of flu. I'm just trying to keep warm while I'm working. And you've been watching some of the videos of my preparation of the Bootlid. As I've said, I've got the bonnets back. They've been painted. I had it back really the second day after New Year. And the tonneau cover. So firstly, the Bootlid's been painted a lot longer. It's been left to gas out, harden off before I started flatting it. And the previous video, I'd finished the stages of flatting up to 1000 grit, and I'm now going to start on the 2000 grit. Now I'm using well, this happens to be a Merca, but the 2000 grit is an Abralon. Well, they are all Merca Abralons. And I've got the 2000 grit on the DA. Now, what I wanted to really share is I've just showed the edges. As you remember, I'd masked off all the edges of the panel, so that when I was doing the rough flatting, we never touched the edges because the paint's always thinner right on the edge. What I've done now is I've changed the masking round to mask off the quarter panels, the scuttle panel, everywhere around, so that when I'm flatting the edges, I'm not going to damage any of the work that's already been done. But now that I've unmasked the edges, I've just showed you the, the shiny bits on the edges. With the 2000 grit, I'm going to start off by putting the DA over them glossy edges to take down some of the orange peel, because obviously when it's polished, the transition between the rear wing and the Bootlid, the edges of the Bootlid would look different because of the amount of orange peel on them. But one of the dangers when you're flatting is that because there's less paint right on the edges, and it's very, very easy to break through. Now, what I wanted to show and share, and some of you know this, and you just think, oh, it's common sense, but there's plenty of other people that do contact me who haven't got the confidence to wet flat. Basically, I'm using a DA with the foam back. You can see they're quite thick and spongy, but basically, if we say that this is the Bootlid, this box, because it's easier for me to explain it than try and show you on the panel, because as you know, I'm not very good at filming. So basically what I want to try and do is keep the pad as flat as possible. And because I want to go over the edge to take some of the orange peel off, what I don't want to do is to take the pad and tilt it when I'm going over it, because basically it's just going to go straight through that edge of the panel. Even though this is only 2000 grit, it wouldn't take many times to break through. So when I'm flatting it, I'm going to keep the DA to, imagine that is the boot lid, and I'm just going to overlap about ½ an inch so that the edge of the pad cuts the orange peel down. I'm not going to tilt it, I'm just going to use the foam expansion that obviously I'm not going to be putting loads of pressure downwards onto the DA. For one, it's an aluminium panel and I don't want to dent it, and two, I don't need to. I'm going to let the DA do the work. So this part, or the centre part of the machine, will not go over the edges. So basically I'm going to go along the edges, whether it be in and out, in and out, in and out, but I'm not going to get all the pressure on the edges. I'm just going to let that part of the pad, and as you can see there, I'm just going to let that take the tops off. Now I'm only going to be doing this around the edges once. I'm going to take the tops off till it looks smoother, and then for the next stage, when I start the 3000 grit, I will take the edges up again. So basically I'll then do the 3000 grit, and when I start the first cut of polishing, which is going to be a coarse compound and a stiff pad, I will leave the tape on the edge. And again, when I start getting to like the second stage of cutting, I'll remove the tape and do exactly the same with the polisher. By not doing that, I shall just use a little bit of the foam pad, or whether it be microfiber. I haven't decided what I'm going to use yet. I will not be putting big pressure on the edges. So I'm taking as much of the risk out of breaking through, because it does happen, and I've done it numerous times through the years. You just chance it a little bit more, and basically you end up either doing spot repairs or have the panel painted again. So to minimise it happening, I mean, don't get me wrong, it doesn't take much to go through on an edge. You have to be really careful. So to protect myself all the time, I'm going to cover the edge with masking tape as much as I can. It still boils down to the final finish and the transition, and perhaps I'll have to polish the edges more just to give it that little bit extra, but I definitely won't be leaning on the edges. It isn't just it's all the panels. Wherever you've got edges or swage lines, you've got to protect that edge as much as you can, especially when you're removing as much material as I am to try and get a show finish, because I want minimal orange peel. And so care has to be taken all the time. You know, everybody's got an idea that you just wave these things about and it does this job. Well, you know, it's the same with body shops. They have to use these machines every day, and you know, during their preparation, they're not really bothered if they break through during the preparation side of it, because they just re-primer it, nib it again, and off they go into the paint booth, paint it. But when they come to polishing, you know, it's another story, and it's very, very easy to break through. So I wanted to explain that the care and attention that you have to take, you know, these things are very, very flexible. You know, even on a backing plate on a DA, they are flexible, and you can, you know, don't get me wrong, I do it myself. You know, sometimes if there's a little stubborn bit, I will edge it, but the common sense side of you tells you that you need to keep it as flat as possible. Now the Bootlid is concave, it's both ways, it's got a curve on it, so I can use the curve to transition the pad without having to lean on it too much. Like I say, it has to be assessed at every stage, whether it needs a little bit more off. I mean, I can always go around the edges with wet and dry 3000 and very lightly nib it, but I would still want to protect that edge, whatever happens. So shortly, I'm going to start using the DA. Now I'm going to use it wet, not dry. These are really designed for dry, but you can use them wet. Personally, I think it makes the pad last longer. You know, I clean the pad out in water as I'm going. We don't want to build up of paint in the pad, because then you get pigtails, and pigtails leave deep scratches, and we've just spent ages flattening it to get the scratches out. So when I'm ready to start, I'll turn the camera on, and you could just see, I'll try and show. You know, I'm not very good at the filming, you know, I'm not, but you know, if you get a good idea of what I'm doing, it's pretty common sense really. I know most of you know already, you know, what I'm on about, but there are people that do ask these questions. So, you know, the idea of these videos is not for me to look good on film, it's to pass on some experience of doing the jobs that I do. And, you know, coming from a garage, body shop, you know, in my past and restoring cars, you know, I have quite a lot of experience of doing this stuff. But things still go wrong, and they always will do. The minute you put flatting paper onto a paint, you are asking for trouble, unless you take great care and attention. And this is why, even to this day, you still see me taping up. I have got the experience really to not have to tape up, because I can flat, knowing I'm not going to go to the edge. I can wet flat, I can use a DA and not go to the edge. But it's an habit that I get into, because complacency breeds contempt, and you have accidents, and I don't want an accident. So I'll still do it. I think it's good practice to do. Even with polishing, you've seen me do it with polishing. It's good practice if you've got doubts about the thickness of the paint. And all the time, you've got to know what you're looking at. So protect yourself and just practice. That's all it is, practice. I mean, you know, you can flat without going onto an edge, but it takes a lot of concentration, especially when you're using a machine, because it oscillates. It's quite easy to lip over. So why not protect yourself? And then you can, I wouldn't say you could do it with your eyes closed, but it does protect that edge, and that's what we want to do. So I hope that, you know, that it's passed on something. You know, that's the whole point of doing the videos. And I'd love to hear your comments, you know, whether you think it makes sense or it's something that you enjoy, you know, hearing about these things. Because this is why I do it, just to pass on some information and add to somebody else's skill set. So anyway, I'll see you later when I put the DA on. I'm going to get the compressor on, let it build up the air pressure, and then we'll get on with it. Right, I'm now ready to start this panel with the 2000 grit, and I'm just going to show a short section of what I do. As I explained, we've got the 2000 grit pad. It's got water in it, but I've put it into an empty bucket, span it to get a lot of the water out of it. And basically, as I explained, if you watch the edge of the DA, you'll see that I'm going to keep it flat and just let it transition just over the shiny part of the edge of the bumper. Now I'll just give it a wipe off with a clean microfiber. We're probably going to need just one more pass like that, and then that will be good enough for that edge. So you can see it doesn't take loads of time. I'm going to remove the camera now and show you what it's done to this edge. And you'll see that because I've kept it flat, the very edge of that panel is still glossy. It has not touched it. So I'll remove the camera and I'll just show you that. Right, I'm sure you can now see that it's flatted the part that was glossy before. But if I move over to the edge, you could see the reflection of the light is still glossy right on the edge of the panel, which then tells you that I haven't bent the DA over. If you look, it transitions right to the very edge of the panel. Now, like I said, I'm going to go over it just one more time on this edge. I'll do the rest of the edges and then I can do all this Bootlid without worrying about going by the edges then. So I can just see a tape line very, very slightly, and that's all I want to get rid of. So I then know that it's transitioned nice and flat. So there we are. There's a one I did earlier. But I'll go on the edge again. You can see the gloss on the edge of the Bootlid, and then when I'm polishing, it'll just transition. If I do exactly the same, we won't have no danger of going through the edge, and we'll have a lovely transition across the panels. Right then, well, I'm going to crack on because there's going to be a few hours involved with doing this 2000 grit, but I just thought I'd show how we do it. Or how I do it. Other people have got different methods that work for them, but this is how I do it. It's only my opinion. This isn't in the rule book. You know, this is just, you know, how I do it. So I'm not trying to tell your mother how to suck eggs. You know, this is my way of doing it, and it works for me. And as you know, I've done many cars and restorations, and although I have had accidents and gone through, they've always been recoverable, because if you go through right on an edge here, you can actually touch it in, let it go off, nib it, and then polish it, and you wouldn't be able to tell. What you don't want to do is go through on the top anywhere here, because then it's a repaint. So there we have it. That's today's bit of wisdom, if you can call it that. Right, I'm going to crack on and get this done. So I'll see you later, and thanks for watching. See you on the next one. Right, I've now finished all the flatting I'm going to do on the Bootlid up to 3000 grit, and I could go to 6000 grit, but I'm not going to bother. I'll polish the rest. But before I show you the Bootlid, I thought I'd show you an important part of the job when you finish. Now, I've been using this DA with a foam pad on, as you know, and wet. Now I've took everything off. I've blown the air through it to blow any water out of it. I've cleaned any sludge from the outside of it, and now before it's put away, so I know that it'll be tip top next time I use it, I'm going to be putting some machine oil through the machine. So a few drops of the machine oil, connect it back up to the airline, and that are in there, and that's ready and prepared for the next job. So it can go away now, and I know next time I get it out it'll be ready to go. Always important to look after your tools, and it's pneumatic oil that are using. All the tools that have air going through them, and to be fair, very rare that anything fails. Same with the electric polishers. You know, I take them apart, blow them out. Not after every job, but every couple of months I just service them and clean them up. So, an important part of the job, look after your tools, they'll look after you. Right, I'm going to take the camera off the stand now, and I'll show you the finish that we've got on this Bootlid. So I'll just remove the camera and I'll be back. Right, this is now flatted up to 3000 grit. As you can see, it already, you know, if you look at it without the light on, it looks glossy. Like I say, I could have gone to 6000 grit, but I'm not going to bother. The next stage will be the polishing. But this is all flatted down to a level, and I'm sure you can see in the light, you know, there is a little tiny bit of orange peel, but I'm going to level that off with the polishing, and then it should match the rest of the car. Now, there's 2 days preparation gone into this Bootlid, and this is the prep that gives you the final finish. You're not going to get a flat finish if you're not going to use flatting. You know, it'll just be orange peely. So there's a lot of prep gone into it, but the final results will pay the dividends. So the next stages will be the polishing. And I'm going to work out what combinations I'm going to use, but it's not going to be hard now to get a really nice finish. And I haven't really got to really lay into it with a polisher to get a finish, because the flatting, using the fine flatting techniques, has removed most of the defects and started recovering the gloss. So I'll move on to the polishing. So I'll see you later. When I've done a section, I'll show you how it's coming on. Well, I've just finished the initial first cutting stage, and as you can see already, it's starting to look how I want it. It's very glossy, but there are some minor flatting marks still to remove, but for the first cut, I have to say it's starting to look spectacular. So after another couple of stages, we should have the sort of finish that I want. But it's all about the preparation. It's the flatting that enables you to get this sort of finish. I'll expect the finish to be better than this by the time I'm done. But what I shall do is she'll cut it down again with a slightly less aggressive compound, and then I'll find something else to do on the car, because basically this paint will sink, because I've flatted the eggshell off it, if you like. You know, and it's had multi-stages of flatting. Basically, it'll suck in to the flatting marks. So I'll give it another stage and then leave it to sink, and then we'll recut it however much it needs, so that you can't see any flatting marks again. But you know, it'll probably take a week or 2 weeks for it to sink. And that's why I left the rest of the car. I did 2 stages on the whole car and then left it so that any sinkage can happen. And then by the time I'm ready and the car's built, I'll be able to go over it again for finishing. And of course, by working on the car, we could get some slight damage or marks in the paint, and we'll get them out at the same time. But for now, this has got to where I want it. I've just got this section on the back here to do now, so I'm going to change the polisher to a smaller polisher and just do the back lip. But no, it's looking good. Right, so that'll conclude the videos on this until I do the next stage. So I'll see you on the next one.